Okay guys, so we are going to practice two more of what we were doing yesterday, and then we're going to move on to the rest of this worksheet or notes. Okay, so once again, we're going to make sure that this is a 1, so that looks good. We're going to add a blank to both sides. Okay, and I do want you to just switch. Instead of -8, we're going to make it into a -9. Okay, so then this would be a -9 plus blank. Okay, so in order to figure out what goes in the blank, we're going to take the 10, divide it by 2, and then we're going to square it. So then 10 divided by 2 is 5 squared, which is 25. So I'm going to be adding 25 to both sides. Okay, so then I'm going to factor this. So x, since it is a plus here, we're going to have a plus here. And then I'm going to do what is ever in that parentheses. So I have a 5, so I'm going to put a 5 squared. And then -9 plus 15 equals 16. Okay, and then to get rid of that square, we're going to square root both sides. So I'm going to have x plus 5 is going to equal plus or minus 4. Okay, so just as a reminder, whenever we take that square root, we do have the plus or the minus. From here then, I'm going to have x plus 5 equaling a positive 4, and then I'm going to have x plus 5 equaling a -4. I'm going to subtract 5, so then x is going to equal -1. Subtract 5, so x would equal -9. Okay. Okay, so then I want you guys to pause the video and try out D. Okay, so D has that a value be 1, so we're going to have an x squared plus 2x. We're going to add the blank to both sides. Okay, in order to figure out what goes in the blank, you're going to take the b value, so 2 divided by 2 squared. It's going to equal 1 squared. So I add that 1 to both sides. From there, we're going to factor this. So I'm going to have an x, since it's a plus, I have a plus here. We're going to put what is ever in that parentheses, so the 1, we're going to have the 1 there, and then we're going to square it, and then equaling 4, because 3 plus 1 equals 4. I take the square root of both sides. I'm going to have x plus 1 equaling plus or minus 2. Because the square root of 4 is 2, and then we also have that plus or minus. Okay, so we're going to split it into two different equations. So x plus 1 equals a positive 2, and x plus 1 equals a -2. We're going to subtract 1 to both sides. So x is going to equal 1. Subtract 1 to both sides. So x would equal -3. Okay, hopefully we're getting pretty good at that skill. Moving on to example 3. So this for sure we did not go over in class, so make sure you are getting this information down on your notes. Okay, so the difference between this equation and this equation, there's two big things. First thing, if you notice, is I have a 2 in front. Okay, so we are going to have to get rid of that 2. So that could be our first thing. So we're going to divide by 2 to everything. So if I divide by 2, I'd have x squared. If I divide by 2, I'd have 10x. Divided by 2, I'd have -4. And then 0 divided by 2 is 0. Okay. So then the other thing that is different is if you look up here, or we'll look at this one, the 3, that c value is on the other side, where this one we have the value on the left side. Okay, so we're actually going to move that to the right side. So I'm going to have x squared plus 10x, okay? And we're going to add those blanks again, equaling. So we added the 4 over. So then it'd be 4 plus blank, okay? So now we can just go through what we were doing before. I'm going to take that 10 and divide it by 2 and square that. So 10 divided by 2 is 5 squared, which is 25. So I'm going to add a 25 to both sides. Okay. So from here then I am going to factor this. So I'm going to have x plus, because I have a plus, okay? And then whatever in the parentheses is 5 squared equaling 4 plus 25 is 29. Okay. Take the square root, take the square root. So I'm going to have x plus 5 equaling plus or minus. Square root of 29 is not a perfect square, so we are going to have to use our calculators. Okay, so once again, you're going to press the second and then the square root button. Okay, I'm going to type in 29 and then press enter. Okay, our directions do say round to the nearest hundredth. So that is this number right here. So we're going to look at the number after. So since it's a 5, we're going to move this one up. So it's going to be 5.39. So 5.39. Okay, split it into two different equations. So I'm going to have x plus 5 equaling 5.39. And then x plus 5 equaling a negative 5.39. Okay, so same idea now. We are going to subtract 5 from both sides. So x would equal 0.39. Subtract 5, x is going to equal negative 10.39. And there you go for that. Okay. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is try to pause it. Try out B if you can, and then you can come back on and check your answers. Otherwise, you can follow along with what I am doing. Okay, so first thing is we have a 3 in front, so we do have to get rid of that 3. So you're going to divide each term by 3. So I'm going to have x squared minus 3x plus okay. Oh, sorry, that's a 9. I'm trying to look at something else and that should be an 8 and I'm totally messing up. Equaling 0. Okay. So then from here, we are going to have to get this 9 to the other side. So then I'm going to have x squared minus 8x plus a blank equals, we're going to have to subtract 9, so it's going to be a negative 9 plus a blank. Okay, so I take my b value, which is negative 8, I divide it by 2, and I square that. So I would have negative 4 squared, which equals 16. So I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Okay. Then I factor this. So I'm going to have x. It is a minus, so I'm going to have minus, and then I have the 4 squared equaling negative 9 plus 16 is going to equal 7. Okay, take the square root to both sides. So I'd have x minus 4 equaling a plus or a minus. The square root of 7 is 2.65. So since this is a 5, it's going to round this one up. So it'd be 0.65. Split it into two different equations. So I'm going to have x minus 4 equaling 2.65, and x minus 4 equaling a negative 2.65. Add 4. So x is going to equal 6.65. A little crammed in here, sorry. Add 4, add 4. X is going to equal, 1.35. Okay. Alright, so I do want you to skip 10 or C. You don't have to worry about that one. Last one we are going to look at though is going to be D as in dog. So I want you guys to pause this one if you have not done so and try this one out. Okay, so for D, what we're going to do is we're going to add x squared. So we are going to get this into the standard form. We're also going to add 4. Okay, so those are going to cancel on those sides. So I'm going to have 4x squared minus 12x plus 7 equaling 0. Okay. Alright, so then from here, what we're going to have is I'm going to divide each excuse me, term by 4. So I'm going to have x squared. 4 divided by 12 is 3. Then we're going to have the 7 divided by 4. So 7 divided by 4 as a decimal is 1.75. If you keep it as a fraction, that is totally fine. Okay. So then I am going to have to move the c value to the other side. So I have x squared minus 3x plus a blank equaling, I would have to subtract the negative 1.75. So I'd have negative 1.75 plus a blank. Okay, we do have to figure out what is in that blank. So I'm going to take my b value, which is negative 3, and divide it by 2 squared. Okay, this would give me a value of 2.25. So I'm going to add 2.25 to both sides. Okay, then I'm going to factor this side. So I'm going to have x, it is a minus, so I have a minus. And you can either do 3 over 2 or 3 divided by 2 is 1.5, so I'm just going to use the 1.5 squared equaling, and then negative 1.75 plus 2.25 is 0.5. Right, then I take the square root to both sides. So I'm going to have x minus 1.5 equals plus or minus square root of 0.5 is 0.7. We're looking at this number, so this, since the 7 is greater than 5, it would be 0.71. So I'm going to have plus or minus 0.71. Split it into two different equations. So x minus 1.5 equals 0.71. And then x minus 1.5 equals a negative 0.71. I'm sorry, from here then, you're going to add a 1.5 to both sides. Adding 1.5 to both sides. You will end up with x equaling 2.21 and x equaling a 0.79.